What's up everybody, and welcome back to another video together. My name is Austin Haney, and today we are going to be talking about the difference between teaching online and teaching in the classroom. Now, I don't know if you've seen the new sensation on TikTok, which has been the Flip the Switch challenge, but I thought since that is exactly what teachers have had to do over the past few weeks, going from teaching in the classroom to teaching online, me and my sister would give you a little demonstration for our Flip the Switch. Let's see it.
Look, I just flipped the switch. I don't know nobody else.
Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that little video. To be honest, whew, it makes me cringe seeing my dance moves. But I wanted to do the video for you, Flip the Switch, because essentially that is exactly what has happened in the world of teaching recently. Teachers from all over the country have been asked to transition from teaching in the classrooms with something that they're much more familiar with to teaching online. So probably the biggest misconception that I first had when we were told that we would be teaching online this semester is I assumed that it would be the same or at least very similar to what I'd already been doing in the classroom. But the reality is that teaching online presents us with a whole new set of challenges, and therefore it requires us to have a whole new set of skills that perhaps we didn't have before. It also causes us to rethink what is good teaching and how is that any different when we're in the classroom and when we're online. So to help us answer those questions, I thought today I would provide you with my top 5 tips for teaching online. Let's get it started. So tip number 1 is pretty simple, and that's just to cut the fluff. What I've realized recently is that we're no longer the student's main priority in life. They're no longer living in their dormitory or living at our campus and being forced to come to our class at a specific time. And so they may be in a situation where they're sharing a computer with their parents or with their brothers and sisters. They may have family responsibilities. They may be trying to hold down a job or something during this time. But we no longer occupy such a high level of priority in the students' lives. And because we're recording videos online, we can no longer have hour-long, 90-minute-long classes meeting multiple times a week. And so what has been really good for me is to recognize in every single lesson what is essential, what are my objectives, what do I need to teach in this lesson, and what's fluff, what's something that's fun, it's entertaining, but can be saved for another day, and to make sure that I'm teaching the objectives but cutting down on the extra. So the second thing I've been learning is that consistency is motivating. And what I mean by that is that your enthusiasm and the work that you put into it goes a long way into encouraging your students' enthusiasm and the work that they're going to put into it. Now, I really learned this first in high school when I remember I had an AP US history teacher, and he got asked to teach AP US history over the summer right before the class started in the fall. And he had never taught it before. And I remember, though, that when he came into our class in the fall, he had spent all summer learning APUSH, and he had really dedicated himself to it, and he knew what he was talking about. And because he had made that investment into learning and things like that, it really encouraged me to make that same investment, to kind of respond in turn. And just the other night, my sister was actually talking about something very similar that she's now experiencing as a student, and I wanted to give her a chance to explain what consistency meant to her.
Yeah, from a student's perspective, I really appreciate when my teachers give me the same amount of work online as they would in class. Like not making the class too hard and complicated or too easy and boring. I like when they stay consistent.
So I think what we can see through this example is that it's a myth to think that students just want your class to be easy. They don't just want it to be easy. They want to feel like they're learning. So if it's too hard or if it's just boring and full of busy work, then that's when students start to get frustrated. But when you're challenging them, when you're pushing them to go to the next level, students actually really, really appreciate that. Okay, tip number 3 is to build in engagement and student participation. Now, to be honest with you, this has been one of the most challenging things for me to think about because I teach oral English. And a huge part of our oral English class is reducing teacher talk time and getting more out of the students, more participation, more engagement, more oral, like back and forth conversations. And the big question is, how do you do that when you're online? What am I supposed to do? To be honest with you, I'm still trying to find ways to answer that question in my own class. But a few of the ideas I've had is number one, I've been using handouts throughout the class. So multiple times throughout the video, I'll have them pause the video and do a little bit of work in their handout. And that way they're doing some active learning as well as just listening to me. Another big way to build engagement is to have the students call each other and talk that way. You can have them have conversations with you through Zoom or through other methods like that. You can cut down the length of your videos so that it's more engaging. Maybe you use some humor, throw in some jokes. Just make it like a little bit funner and a little bit faster to watch your video. There's lots of softwares and websites out there that teach you how to do video editing. But another big idea is just to focus more on the other modes of communication besides interpersonal communication. So focus on their listening skills, focus on their reading comprehension, maybe even focus on their presentational speaking and things like that, rather than just focusing on them talking to a partner. And I think that will really help you build their engagement and make sure they're participating week after week. And while we're on the topic of engagement and student participation, I think I should share with you one of the most important tips that I've found for making sure my students actually know what they're doing. And that's modeling and making sure that I'm using appropriate language. So the simplest way I've heard modeling explained is simply, I do, then we do, and then you do. So I remember when I first started learning Chinese, and if the teacher just began speaking to me and telling me even something very simple, like circle this word, if I didn't know the words for circle and this and word, then I would have absolutely no idea what they were saying. But if they circled the word on the board, and then they pointed to me and they said circle, and we did it together, and then they started showing me the pattern, then it would really enable me to do something potentially even beyond my current Chinese level. And so when you are teaching, make sure that you're modeling for your students exactly like what you want them to do for their homework or what you want them to do for their assessments, but also in the vocabulary structures. Give them good examples for how to use this structure. Give them examples of patterns and the way that this grammar structure works out in Chinese and then how it's different in English. Give them good modeling. And with that is making sure that you're using appropriate language for your students. And so a lot of times when I was beginning teaching, I would try to introduce a slide and I would just say, all right guys, so I want you to look at this slide, I want you to read this and then talk to your partner about what it says, and I would just go on this huge like tangent and like connecting all these different sentences, and I'm sure that I was just absolutely blowing my students' minds because I was talking fast, I was using run-on sentences, they were sometimes like discombobulated, they weren't clear, and so I was giving so many extra details and extra words, and the students needed something simple like read this, okay, circle the key word, okay, then talk with your partner. That's what they needed, not my whole explanation of why I thought of this activity and why it's so great and how they need to do it, okay? So make sure you're paying attention to your incidental language and make sure you're giving your students a good model of how they're supposed to do this before you throw them out into the water and have them do it for themselves. Very similar to that last tip is tip number 5, and that's that I recommend that you be very clear up front about your expectations for every assignment and how the students are supposed to do it. So for example, when I first started teaching online, I knew that I wanted my students to, for example, record themselves speaking on WeChat and send me a message. But what I didn't think through was how long should that speaking assignment be? Should they talk to a partner or should they do it by themselves? Should they send it to our group or should they send it to me individually? When is this assignment due? What all do they need to include? And so what wound up happening is I just got a zillion text messages asking me, Mr. Haney, how do we do this? Mr. Haney, when should I turn this in? Mr. Haney. And then not only did I get so many text messages, but also the students didn't always do the assignment correctly. And so what I really recommend is don't worry about cutting too much into their freedom and their flexibility. Students appreciate structure, especially in a time like this where we're teaching online. And so make sure you're clear about your due dates, clear about what you expect from them, give them a clear rubric up front, help them understand how they're going to be graded. All those kind of things, the more you can think through those specific details, I promise you, your students might not thank you in person, but they will be thanking you when they look over your assignments. And that kind of brings us to our last tip, which is sort of a bonus tip for you, but I thought it was too important to leave out. And that's if you are teaching online, you really need to get a consistent and an efficient workflow. So what that looks like for me is I've set up a little studio for myself. in my house, and every time I walk in here, I just need to turn on the camera, turn on the lights, and I'm ready to start recording. It's the same thing with lesson planning, getting a template that you can just enter in the same information in week after week into a very similar template, keeping your PowerPoint structure very similar, uploading or sending similar emails and similar messages on WeChat. Having consistency really helps having efficiency. So I recommend that whatever that looks like for you, that you just find what it looks like to get into a good, consistent workflow. And that is going to save you a ton of time. Don't try to reinvent the wheel every single week, and I think you'll be better served because of it. All right, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it can really be helpful for you in your online teaching. If you've got another aspect of teaching online or even just teaching in general that you would like for us to talk about on this channel, I recommend that you leave a comment down below and we'll try to make that video very soon. If you like this video, make sure to leave it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.